Woo! Yeah!
We're on!
Woo!
We made it!
Somehow.
Somehow, some way,
Yes.
here we are.
Gentle audience.
Yes.
Kind audience. Patient audience.
Hello and welcome to Itz Happenin show, community grassroots media for the people, by the people. I'm Jose Gloria.
And I'm Dylan Thompson. We are your hosts tonight.
We are your hosts indeed.
Indeed.
Indeed. It's Happenin is a movement of the heart and of the mind. It's the energy of the universe that creates waves inside us and all around us, which allows us to activate, motivate, and elevate vibrationally and intellectually towards love, truth, justice, and wisdom. It's happening in every which way.
It's Happenin is a culture of empowerment. It's people having the right to exist and participate as equals. It's a dream of what the world could be. But the future we want is only possible if we make it happen. So stand up, get informed, and fight back.
Fight back. Booyaka.
Oh, I gotta work on my sound effects. Ooh.
You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us, so we thank you because of you.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh.
Really happening here.
Really happening.
Late,
but nevertheless great. Hopefully. No, and really, truly, because we have great guests with us today. We're going to just jump right into it, skip our usual top stories, but you know the deal. The world's on fire. We're all going to die.
You know.
COVID.
Jerry Serrano's mad. He wants a, pension, higher pensions.
Yeah. Yeah. The Santana POA up at it again.
Yep, up to their zany antics.
Yeah,
as
you
usual.
know what they're going
But
to
this time the city manager and the city attorney are fighting back. So,
Yeah.
Good times.
It's going to be a brawl.
We'll talk about it next week.
We will. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the guests for here tonight. So, Patricia Jovel Flores is the executive director with OCEJ Environmental Justice, a local nonprofit. She was raised in Santana and began organizing as a student at UC Berkeley, where she worked to bring student power to bear in support of campus labor organizing and local prison and abolishment movement. After graduating, PJ returned to Santana, where she organized with Colectivo Tonantzin to fight wage theft and defend the rights of day laborers and domestic workers in OC. Currently, she helps coordinate the Tierras Comunitarias Coalition to ensure public lands in Santana. In her spare time, PJ is a storyteller and musician and is currently working on a novel centering trans femmes and two-spirit people in the fight for liberation and indigenous sovereignty. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Woo!
Woo, 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 woo. And also with us here tonight, we got Nathan Taft. Nathan is a senior digital campaigner at the environmental nonprofit Stand.earth and a proud Santana resident. Santaneros.
Yeah.
And at Stand.earth, he's the digital and communications lead for the Safe Cities initiative that's helping local municipalities phase out fossil fuels and fast-track clean energy. For the past 5 months, he's also been working with Councilmember Jesse Lopez and community groups to pass climate and a public health emergency here in Santana. Welcome, Nathan.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome. Yeah. Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Let's start with you, Patricia. So, OCEJ, executive director. I like we were mentioning before the show. I was involved early on with like the soil samples and this kind of revelation that a lot of folks had. At least I did, and maybe for other people in Santana, that there was lead in our soil, and this had a serious impact on the community and the children and all sorts of public health issues. And so, but you've also been working with all sorts of organizations. But I mean, what brought you into the OCEJ struggle, and what are some of the things that you've found from your work as the executive director and project director for this org?
Right. So I think I started with OCEJ back when you were visiting us in the office, right? In 2016 to 2017, we did this door-to-door survey throughout Orange counties, mostly the inland communities of color, basically, right? Because that's where our communities tend to be focused. And asking, like, what are people's environmental concerns? What do they see as the issues with the health of the environment around them? And I think that was like a really formative experience because it was actually getting to know not only my own community in Santana, having grown up there, but all the areas around, Anaheim, Orange, Fullerton, up into like Placentia and Costa Mesa, right? And realizing obviously every place has a, unique perspective on environmental issues, right? That are locally affecting them, but also that residents are the experts in that sense, right? Because they're the ones that are walking through their neighborhoods on a daily basis, you know. Like my mom, you know, told me like my brother and I have asthma, and she would always say like it's because I was walking through the Delhi neighborhood where there's all these aerospace, military defense manufacturers, right? And sure enough, when we talk to residents over there, we learn that there's cancer clusters, and that like when they've raised complaints to the city, like the most these factories have done is send out trucks with like apple cinnamon perfume to cover the sense of the emissions from the factories, you know. So definitely, like, you know, it's in my neighborhood, and it's something that's affecting the people around me. So it's less about a job and more just survival, you know, like this is something I need to be involved with, you know. And yeah, seeing how the soil lead issue has taken off, I'm more than happy to talk a little bit about that if you like. But yeah, definitely, like that's been a huge part of our research, seeing how really this issue where at 80 parts per million, it affects the IQ of children. And really, we're seeing neighborhoods where the lead in the soil is at 2,000 to 4,000 parts per million. So, you know, like more than 50 times higher than that Cali PA standard, you know. So it's definitely something that's like, once again, it's about survival. It's about like the health of everyone around us. It's not something that can be pushed off anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that might be shocking to a lot of people. I mean, maybe not many of us in this community, but that, you know, this is really the city or county level responsibility, but it seems like the grassroots has to take it up. And I see that as the role of, maybe that's the role of your group in a sense, that you have to bring it to you know, to the attention of the, I don't know, bodies that can actually be capable of resolving this and handling it. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the cities, and how are they matching this effort from the grassroots to expose these things?
I think that it's been an uphill battle for sure. I definitely think like that's what OCEJ and other groups have been doing, is kind of being that intermediaries, like where we can bring in, you know, relationships with people with research experience at UCI, for example, but then like bring that together with community members so that community can be the one doing the research, investigating the issues, analyzing the soil samples and the other data, and then telling, you know, elected officials for sure, like what the issues are, but also creating solutions on their own, you know, like it's policies on one end and then direct solutions, like actually remediating the soil ourselves, you know, is another side of that work that I think is equally as important. But as far as the city is concerned, you know, now we're in negotiations with them, like through this resolution, and as well at the same time through the city's general plan update, to be able to include measures to remediate the soil, to improve access to blood lead testing and soil testing, and other measures, you know, to make this something that we're including healthcare provisions, right? You know, to make sure that undocumented residents who wouldn't have access to Medi-Cal or other insurance otherwise, if they're living in an area that's affected by lead, we want to make sure that they have access to all the necessary healthcare services, so that those health repercussions are being addressed. At first, the city was reluctant for all that. You know, they pushed back on every single part of that, and the Orange County Healthcare Agency as well. We had an interaction at the beginning when we were presenting our data last year, I want to say, where we got a response from the healthcare agency where they were like, well, are you sure it's that there's lead in the soil, or is it just that kids around here eat too much Mexican candy?
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't that Solorio?
I think he was a part of that, but also on the healthcare agency side. This time when we talked about it this year, they brought up Indian spices. They brought up turmeric.
What?
Right. And so they said like, well, maybe we need to pay attention to the food that people are eating. But we did soil samples. Like that's a distraction from the main point. We've already done our study. We've proven that this is an issue throughout Santa Ana. We're sure throughout the rest of the county as well. So all bringing up foods and things like that is a barely coded racist response to throw us off the track, right? To distract us from what the goal is, which is actually getting support to deal with this issue that, to be honest, the Black Panthers were investigating in the 60s. So it's not a new issue, you know? And so it's long since that they should have been taking action on that. And now it's because of community pressure that it's coming from multiple angles. Through this resolution, the community members demanding action, through, you know, articles of Univision and LA Times about the lead issue. It's all this coming together now that's forcing people to take it seriously. And now they're trying to negotiate with us and make sure that they can address it in a way that won't get the community upset more, you know?
Well, it takes a village, as my co-host here says, and and it takes passionate, capable, and committed community members and community leaders and advocates, to be able to get the envelope, push the envelope and get the ball rolling, where cities will sit on it and not do nothing unless they're continually prodded, throughout it. But Nathan, I want to bring you into this conversation. Of course, we mentioned a little bit on the show, working with the communication, the digital, the online, social media, of campaigning, in all sorts of ways. But here you are now as a senior digital campaigner for Stand.earth. Can you tell us a little bit about them and the Safe Cities initiative?
Yeah. So essentially, what Safe Cities does is, and it's a piece of what Stand.earth does, which has a whole bunch of different campaigns working in a whole bunch of different areas. But Safe Cities specifically will work with individual communities, cities, counties, to pass policies that will phase out fossil fuels and fast track a clean energy solution for those communities. So Santa Ana is an example of where we're trying to do that here, and it's near and dear to my heart because I live here with my beautiful wife, and we, and I worked on Jessie Lopez's campaign. I helped do digital work when she first ran last year, or two years ago at this point, a few years back when she ran, and it was But we're not trying to do it just here in Santa Ana, where they're trying to do it all over the place, because what you see is, like Patricia was saying, is that you have communities that are dealing with heavy industrial projects or fossil fuel projects in their communities, and nothing happens. Nothing gets done. They send out, what did you say? They send out, cinnamon smelling trucks to, hide the smell. But there's so much power that things can do. So for example, there was a victory that just happened 2 weeks ago in Whatcom County. It was which is the most northwestern county in the U.S. And they have 3% of the state's population, 40% of the state's oil refineries. Oof. Okay, this place is just getting killed by fossil fuel pollution. And they were getting hit after project after project. They wanted to build the biggest coal export terminal in North America there. And what happened is the community basically said, enough. We don't want this here anymore. We don't want this at all. And so they passed a policy basically saying, you can't build this here. And the wonky technical term is land use policy. And it's the idea that if someone wants to build a gas station or a supermarket or whatever, they need to get a permit from the local government. And what this is saying is you upgrade those pieces of legislation to say, you can't build a new refinery. We will not give you permits for new refineries because it's going to poison the people that live here. We will not give you permits for new oil exploration. And there's no refineries or pipelines or big things like that here in Santa Ana, but there are gas stations. Right. And so gas stations are super toxic. The tanks link into the groundwater. You got benzene emissions, which cause cancer and asthma and a whole host of other issues. And there was a community, Petaluma, California, north central California, basically banned new gas stations. And we have a gas station within 5 minutes of every resident. We're not saying we're going to tear them down, but why do we need more?
Right.
Because just like car washes, we need one at every corner. Damn it! I posted the other day. I'm like, is car washes the new Starbucks? I think it is. They're apparently popping up everywhere. Like when in doubt, open lot, car wash. But Nathan, you mentioned these various wins, right? Or at least these communities organizing themselves and fighting back against the corporations, the fossil fuel industry, and trying to protect their health, protect their environment, protect future generations, and so in a sense, what the resolution that you have put forth for the Santa Ana City Council to vote on in the very near future, is attempting to do something like that. And it's a coalition, right, with various different organizations. I'm seeing that the Chispa is a part of it, and OCEJ, of course, and your organization, and Rise Up Willowwick, other ones. But it says Santa Ana Climate and Public Health Emergency Resolution of 2021. So, I read through it all, and it's, whereas, all that good, good old stuff. But yeah, can you just maybe summarize what you hope that this resolution does, or codifies in some sort for the city of Santa Ana and its residents?
Yeah. So there's a few pieces, and I think what we've been just talking to folks and describing is that this is really, because it's a resolution, there's not a lot in there that's binding, but what it does do is that it's a roadmap. It's a statement of intent to be working on these issues, and then it's going to be up to us and the community and the coalitions that's formed in the making of this process to go forward and push the city government to do more and follow through on these goals. And so, for example, talking about saying, hey, if you're going to build a new building in Santa Ana, don't put gas hookups in it, for example, because there was something pretty shocking that, to me at least, growing up in a home, my home still has a gas stove, but it is as bad as secondhand smoke for kids when you're growing up for asthma. And my wife grew up in a home with a stove, and she has asthma, and that could be a coincidence, or it could have been a factor. And so that's something. So it's basically stating the intent to say we're going to work to phase out fossil fuels
and have electric coils, right? Instead, or just
there's electric coils, but there's also this really cool technology that's basically it is the same cost as the gas cooking now, which is induction, which is actually what professional chefs are starting to use and like even more, because it heats the pan evenly, it boils water more quickly, and the cool thing is you could turn it on and put your hand on it, and you're not going to get burnt because it just heats up the pot or the pan. So that's a bit of a tangent. But,
yeah, that's
so that's in there, and then you have talking about endorsing the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is a sister campaign to safe cities, and that is basically advocating for a phase out of fossil fuels and a just transition off of them. So stop building new fossil fuels, phase out existing ones, and justly transition off of them, taking it a step further than the Paris Climate Accords. And Santa Ana would be one of the first cities in the world to endorse that. Yeah, please.
No, that's I was like, woo, that's great. Yeah. And as just kind of reading over this, it says like only 4% of the city of Santa Ana is dedicated for parks and recreation, and it ranks 88th out of 100 most populous cities as far as because of lack of access to parks, amenities. And it also talks about just the risks of improper zoning and land use and unmitigated urban development that can lead to elevating heat temperatures and threats of wildfires. I mean, we don't have too much of a threat here, like at least in Santa Ana. There's not forests, but I mean, Anaheim Hills recently got, had a situation. Of course, we know the Dixie fires right now, second largest in the history. This is a problem, but also it talks about asthma, obesity, and heat exhaustion. And Patricia, feel free to jump in as well. But the whole, in a time when people like the governor are saying we need more housing, develop more housing, but you're saying don't over develop because this is going to have health impacts. So how do you coincide the two? I guess the need for housing and the need to address the unmitigated urban development.
Yeah, I can go for it. I can give my best in terms of, I believe I read that statistic that there's more empty homes in the United States than there are houseless people, right? Not even houseless families, right? But houseless individuals. So there's definitely I would say that there's not a housing shortage. What there is that there's a, greed on the part of wealthy landlords and capitalists to share that housing, right? To make that housing publicly available at prices that are actually accessible for community members, right? And because, as y'all are probably aware, being Santa Ana residents or OC residents at least, rent is incredibly high here at a rate that's disproportionate with the wage. So as long as that's the case, then it doesn't matter how many apartments or houses you built, because people won't be able to pay for them, right? So you have to be responsible with the resources that are currently in place, right? But besides that, I think that we also have to think about, like, even if, for example, with those with the problem of wildfires, right? Like, all of this is interconnected here. Every part of, from the mountains to the sea here, right, is interconnected. And so, like, we have to view our health as connected to, like, the health of the Anaheim Hills, right? Of the remaining forests and hills, like, around us, right? Because that definitely, like, the smoke and ashes, fall on our communities, right? The most, more than anything. And not to mention, like, the fact that fossil fuels are being used around this area, right? And freeways and all that stuff, like, all of that contributes. So I think that these things can't be parsed apart. We have to view them as interconnected issues. Housing to environmental issues are all interconnected. So yeah, I think that, and we try to address that as much as possible. I'll say, like, with the lead issue, for sure, we want to push the city to try to include rent control provisions, like, especially if a tenant's living on a property that's been affected by lead. They shouldn't be facing exorbitant rents to live on a place that's literally, slowly killing them, affecting their health, and affecting the health of their children. So we also don't want to see the issue where, like, if they take on remediation, we don't want landlords to then, once the lead's removed from the soil, to evict their tenants and then jack up the rent prices to say, well, now we have a healthy neighborhood that, wealthier people from out of town can come in to live in, right? We want to make sure that, like, a comprehensive, like, policy means protecting people with tenant protections, with rent control, with, like, just cause eviction protections and all those things. So I think that you have to have this very intersectional approach to all of these issues, right?
Yeah, that's crazy, because gentrification can just play in there, right? Like, oh, it's cleaned up now, so it's hand in hand.
Yeah, and it, and part of the whole environmental justice issue is that, where did they put Black and Brown or in indigenous communities, or low income, in the places where they were dumping a bunch of toxins for years and not really thinking about the future. So there is a part of it that, like, you have to clean up the past mistakes, but then I think the more proactive one is also making sure that we don't continue, right, Nathan? And that's kind of what you were mentioning about, like, limiting the amount of gas stations, or using different type of building materials. I think was included, and also the resolution, like, acknowledges that a lot of it is tied up in the federal, with the federal government, right? That they have a lot of say in it, but also local communities and municipalities have a lot of things, small tweaks that can go a long way, right, towards getting us into more clean energy, but also like, not so dependent on fossil fuels, right?
Yeah, I think it can, not just small pieces, but big pieces. You're a city. Santa Ana's got, hundreds of thousands of residents in it, and if they decide, hey, we're not going to build new gas stations, or hey, we're going to be new buildings, they're going to be no gas in it. That's a significant chunk out of the fossil fuel industry. And what's cool about Safe Cities is that it's not just Santa Ana. There's at this point, there's more than 100 different cities that have done stuff like this. So the more and more that pass policies like this, the fossil fuel industry is great at stopping legislation right at the federal level and the state level. They lobby a senator or two and they stop it, but they can't fight on 500 different fronts, right? They can't fight all over the place. So what you're seeing is that communities are winning because the fossil fuel industry can't be everywhere at once. And because when the people making the decisions are the people actually getting poisoned by this stuff, there's a bit of a different outcome.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to fight climate change because they may not believe in it, but I don't know how you don't at this point. But no one wants their kids to get poisoned by a coal plant or an oil refinery or a pipeline. So it's
desal plant.
Finding ways. I'm sorry?
Or a desalination plant.
Or desalination plant. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there's a sense of hopelessness sometimes from folks, and I think the best antidote to despair is action. And there's plenty that local communities can do to protect themselves from fossil fuels and other heavy industry. And part of the reason this resolution has so much in that, there's not just fossil fuels, right? It talks about lead and soil, it talks about park spaces, it talks about unmitigated urban development, is because these are all interconnected. right? It's not you don't do climate work and then there's that environmental justice stuff that's over to the side like it's something else. Like it's the same thing. You can't have climate justice without environmental justice.
Yeah, and you know it's interesting or it's important to differentiate between climate change. How much, which is ultimately boils down to how much power or influence do human beings have, you know, to like the increases or decreases and the global temperature. Some say a lot, some say a little. You know, perhaps we can have a robust debate about that. But what we can't have a debate about is the amount of poison that we put into like in our water, in our air, and you know the very verifiable ways in which it causes cancers and all sorts of ill health to all people, mostly like black and brown and minorities. But really, like unless the rich folks, affluent folks go up to Mars with Elon Musk.
Well, when they do,
yeah, the small few that will carry on our society, everybody else is going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, the latest, the IPCC report, the climate report, the big one that came out today that was in the news, it was like they basically finally said it's unequivocal. Like there's no chance it's not us. Like climate change is happening and it's us and it's a fact. Like there's like it's like gravity. Like it's been proven that clearly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a big hesitancy in our society. I think there's like a cultural issue or there is some issue here where like we want to reject that the Americans can live like we live and there's no consequences whatsoever. Like you can have the Pacific trash patch like accumulating and swirling like a giant boulder in the ocean and all these things, and people are just blind to it because like
it's out of sight, out of mind, right? I've been trying really specifically to eliminate bring my own bags, right, and not use my own straw. Like it's not a lot, but it's a little, but I'm like, if everybody were to save all the plastic that they use in a month in their room, like they would just like get a little taste about how much plastic they use and how much we're in trouble. Although I will say that there was some studies about some maggots that can eat plastic, which was really great news to hear because yeah.
After all we've done to Mother Nature, it's going to bail us out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mother Nature coming through in the clutch. And I want to bring in, I'm sorry, PJ, I know that you have to go. But I know that you wanted to touch about on the work that you're doing with Indigenous communities, right? And so again, like as you mentioned, intersectionality. There's a lot of different things that are like that intersect within this struggle for but I feel like more than almost any group, Indigenous communities have been fighting for the rights of the rivers, right, of nature, of the planet, and really kind of bringing back this concept that's like land is sacred, in a moment where capitalism says nothing is sacred, everything is for sale, and we must just use and abuse nature to the benefit of a few. But Indigenous communities are fighting back, and you've been a part of that in various ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with anything that we're working on, I think that there's the opportunity to draw the connections, to settler colonialism, to the effect that it's having on Indigenous communities. As well as, of course, it's intersectional, with connecting to anti-Blackness, imperialism and all that, right? I think when we talk about, even just capping gasoline stations in Santana, that relates to, needing to chop the legs off, of the oil companies, right? To prevent things like Line 3, the Keystone XL pipeline, all of the different struggles that are going on across the Americas right now to protect, Indigenous communities and the land from the incursion of these settler colonial oil pipelines, right? And all these other environmentally devastating projects. All of these things are interrelated, of course, because Indigenous peoples, since time immemorial, have had the science and knowledge to protect and care for all of these places, the land, the water, and the air. And when the settler colony comes in, just takes away that relationship, forces the state in between there, enslaves people on this land to create something completely different, that is endangering the health of every single person on this planet, not just the ones that they're directly impacting, right? And I think it's easy for people to, forget about this direct impact, like you said, like with the big island of plastic in the Pacific, because everything here is kind of interwoven on that kind of framework of lies, right? Because if not, people would be having these gigantic existential crises about, living off of all of these injustices, right? I think all of that, I think I just wanted to provide that broader kind of context, right, before going in with the specific, because everything that we're talking about can definitely be drawn back to those issues, Specifically here in Orange County and LA, these are territories of Acadian and Tongva people who traditionally care for these lands, right? And so there's a number of sacred places. I mean, arguably, every part of the land and water is sacred, right? But there's specifically village sites throughout Orange County and LA that have been, consistently under attack and under threat of development. And even more so because the Acadian and Tongva people are not federally recognized. In the 1850s, there were treaties drawn, but Congress ordered a gag order on those treaties. And when they were rediscovered in 1905, it was basically destroyed, right? And so because of that, there's no reservation system for many California tribes, right, who remain federally unrecognized. And even with state recognition, it makes these battles to protect sacred sites that much more difficult, right? And so that's where the Acadian and Tongva people are facing up against right now. And these battles are going on a number of different fronts, but Pavungna is one of the big ones right now. Pavungna is a place of gathering for both the Acadian and Tongva peoples. It's where the lawgiver emerged and one of their most important spiritual leaders, right? And so it has a spiritual importance on the level of like what other people would consider Mecca and Jerusalem, right? That's locally here for the Acadian and Tongva people. It has that level of spiritual importance. Cal State Long Beach and the cities of Long Beach and Los Alamitos were built on top of the village of Pavungna, right? Which is one of the biggest villages in Southern California. But regardless, people have been going there continuously to gather and practice ceremony since then, and especially, through the 50s and the 70s when it was registered as a National Historic Site. In the 90s, there was a big fight because Cal State Long Beach wanted to build a strip mall over the site. But there was a lawsuit with these tribes, with the California Commission, Native American Heritage Commission, and the ACLU, which protected it in the 90s. And there's a promise from the Cal State Long Beach president at that point to not develop over it again. But since then, there's just been again and again plans to try to develop over it. So what recently happened in 2019 is that basically there was construction going on the other side of campus, and their contractors took big piles of debris, concrete, rebar, and soil, and dumped them all across the site, all across the remaining 22 acres that are not taken over by the university, where ceremony continues to be held and where ancestral remains are buried. So they scattered these, all this debris all across the site, which has been discovered to have naturally occurring arsenic at levels that are dangerous for kids. And so you can still see those piles there. The university hasn't removed them. And basically that was the outset of the lawsuit, because that was done without consultation with the Acadian and Tongva people, right? And they even recognized that it was a mistake that shouldn't have happened. But it gave rise to this larger issue that there were plans in place that they had already been consulting with construction crews, and with the people who plan things, architects, to be able to develop these building complexes across Pavungna and a bunch of roads, expanded parking lots and things like that. They were selling it as these Native American cultural buildings, right? But they would have to destroy the wildlife areas that are there, the ceremonial sites that are there, in order to build these buildings. So who is it actually benefiting, right? It's really not about actually serving the specific Acadian and Tongva people, but they want to be able to attract general Native American funding, right? Like attract students from across the country, while completely disregarding the rights of the people who are actually native to this place. And so that's what this lawsuit is about, is being able to get a written down agreement that the university will not develop over these remaining 22 acres of Puvongna, that they'll leave it in peace for perpetuity, right? So that Akashman Tongva people and the larger intertribal community here in Southern California can continue to gather here, because it's become something sacred for so many people, including people who are displaced from their original homelands, right? Can come to practice ceremony there and be in community there. It's somewhere where as soon as you step onto Pavoni, you recognize how sacred that place is. And so that's what makes it that much more important to protect. There'll be a court date on September 17th in this lawsuit against the university, and it seems like the California Native American Heritage Commission will be supporting as well, which was an uphill battle, you know, and so there is hope, but it still means that we need all of our community to come out and support, you know, and that's what it means as building these kind of, you know, intertribal, intercultural relationships and bridges, so that really we're showing up for the people who care for the health of all the land and water that we benefit from, right? And we need to do that because that means their cultural survival, but really the survival of all people here.
100%. Well, we really wish the best for all, you know, the tribes that are fighting for that. Hashman, you said, yeah, and yeah, and so hopefully it goes good in September when the court date happens, and you know, continuing to fight that fight, because their rights should be respected. So.
I'm wondering,
plug really quick. If you want to keep up to date with the fight, you can follow @ProtectPuvongna, and I can email you all that Instagram handle as well. But follow them on Instagram, and you'll be able to see like week to week what's going on with that fight.
Yeah, nice. I did want to ask like how people can get involved, because it sounds like litigation is like a main tool to stall these projects. I'm just wondering like if people can just follow the thing, or if there's like volunteer opportunities or something, or orgs people can get involved into, you know.
Definitely Protect Puvongna and OCEJ. We actually have a group of young organizers and interns right now working to develop a website. So it should be up pretty soon, friendsofpavongna.org. And that will also have updates as well as access to the GoFundMe. We want to definitely fundraise because lawsuits cost money.
Oh, yeah.
And so we definitely need support that way for folks who can't physically show up in person. That's a really important way. And we'll be hoping to post like historical information there too, so people can understand the whole context of this fight.
Nice, yeah.
Great. Well, Patricia, thank you so much for being on today, and you know, keep on the good fight in OCEJ. Hopefully this resolution passes here in Santana, but also, you know, the continued good work that is exposing and making the city of Santana do right by its residents in this fight, but then also the indigenous communities here and throughout. So. If you have to go, I understand. I'll continue a little bit with with Nathan here. Nathan, so I want to.
Thanks for coming.
What are your thoughts as far as the resolution? Do you think that we have a good chance of passing?
Yeah. Looking at it, so I mean, I think what it's going to come down to is turnout. Like, who turns out more people? Who gets more people to call in on the 17th. It's so it's coming up next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, and it's going to be who has more people calling in and making public comments, because obviously there's the environmental justice community and the climate community. They want to see this pass, but we've been hearing I'll say rumors that the gas industry is going to try to turn out people and try and derail this legislation, because they don't want to see the city of Santana, even though it's a resolution, it's not anything binding. They don't want to see them moving away from fossil fuels, doing stuff that could hurt their bottom line, even though it means, you know, poisoning people and superheating the planet.
Yeah.
So it's going to come down to people calling in, but unless folks are overwhelmingly against it on that Tuesday, we think we have a good chance of getting it passed. It's just whether or not it'll be a 4-3 vote or a 5-2 vote in favor.
Yeah, and you only need 4 votes, right? You need a simple majority.
You need a simple majority, but if you get more, from my understanding of the way at least the city government here works, is that if you get a stronger margin, you have a better chance of city staff being more active on implementing the measures. Just because if it's a close vote, they may be like, oh, well, maybe 2 or 3 of these people will be out of office in a few years and I will have done all this work and it'll get undone by the next person who comes in. But if you get a bigger majority, then it's like, oh, okay, they really want us to do this and I better start working on this.
Yeah. What are some, are you thinking of any like ordinances, like, or do we have models for this in other cities? Like, because like what you mentioned, the resolution includes like, hey, we want to look into banning gas stations. So if the city staff looks into that and we're like, hey, that's viable and the city's interested in it, I'm sure there's several possible ordinances that could come out of this, right?
Absolutely. So what part of Safe Cities, what they do is we have a database of every municipality that has passed a policy that restricts fossil fuel infrastructure or does stuff to implement a just transition. Some of those are gas station bans. Some of those are saying no new fossil fuel infrastructure. Some of those are saying no new refineries. Some of it's electrifying bus fleets, saying we're not going to sell internal combustion engine cars after 2030 or by a certain date. So there's all kinds of different things and different levers and mechanisms that local municipalities can do. And what it looks like, they just need, the first step is saying, okay, the boat's sinking. It's got a ton of holes in the bottom. We're not going to poke new holes in the bottom by building new gas stations and doing these things. We're gonna stop the sinking and there's lots of different ways folks can move forward on that.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's similar, or perhaps many of a lot of the same a thought is behind the Green New Deal, right? That's been the big the boogeyman that that the right uses to target the left, and saying that they're not gonna let you eat cows anymore and and this and
no
that,
more hamburgers.
But really it's a resolution on a national level to try to get some things moving as far as eliminating our dependency on fossil fuels, right? And recently, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, there's been some wins with the Keystone Pipeline and other things that have been great. And then, obviously, from Trump to Biden, things changed as far as we're gonna be part of the Paris Climate Accord, right? Yeah. So symbolic, right? Kind of things, but still important. But I mean, are the Democrats in power doing enough to really fight back against the fossil fuel industry on the state and national level?
So, I mean, I think the answer to that question is unfortunately no. I'm going to be totally honest.
I thought you were going to say yes.
They are doing it is better in most places than what Trump was doing. I think one disturbing trend is that more permits are actually getting approved, like new drilling permits are getting approved under Biden than under Trump, which is terrifying. I read that and I'm like, you got to get your act together. Yeah. There's lots of finance mechanisms and things they're doing in that way. I think in the, depending on which infrastructure bill and what version of it gets passed, there could be a lot of positive things there. They did a thing, there was a community that, a safe city in South Portland in Maine that basically had been fighting an oil company for years. They passed a policy saying, we don't want you bringing tar sands through our bay. And tar sands is super dirty oil from Canada primarily, and we don't want this coming through our town. And they passed an ordinance, and of course the oil company sued them and said, you can't tell us not to do that. Was in court for 6 years.
Oh my gosh. $2
million in this small city of 25,000 people. It's just insane. And the Biden administration came out with an amicus brief and basically said, hey, what they're doing doesn't violate any state rights or state laws or federal laws or anything like that. And a week after they did that, the oil companies basically got rid of their appeal and stepped down. And so that they did something good there. They're backing off of drilling in the Arctic and in other areas. So it's not that they're not doing anything, but given the scale of the problem and what we're facing, they're doing things that would have been great, 30 years ago when we really had a chance to. We need massive systems change.
Yeah,
right?
This isn't incremental anymore, right? We're way past that.
Can't,
yeah.
Exactly. You can't do incremental changes. And that's what I'm hoping with Safe Cities and things like this, is that this is a way for people, while stuff is stalled and moving too slowly at the state and national level, it's something you can do at home in your community to make a real difference. And it's got the fossil fuel industry freaked out because they keep losing. They keep losing because the decision makers are people who are getting poisoned by their products.
Yeah, it does feel like they're still, they have so much money and so much power and so much influence, and they get huge tax breaks and subsidies when they don't need them from, our government. But I am very much hopeful and just motivated and inspired by the young people, right? That are folks that belong to this Sunrise Movement and other groups that are grassroots and really fighting back, right? But also, I'm sure you've heard about this, right? That gentleman that was, I believe, he sued Chevron in Bolivia, I want to say, somewhere in Latin America, and Chevron got it to that they point that he is under house arrest right now, and he shouldn't be, and it's just like, wow, like he took on the big industry, got them to pay all this money for to these communities that got totally like poisoned with all their toxic pollution that they did in that area, and then now he's paying for it, and even AOC stepped up, right, and other folks were trying to bring awareness to this case, and I read into it and I saw some stuff, so I'm like, what? So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the young people, but also just this particular case?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about the specifics of that particular case. I know it's still being adjudicated. Hopefully justice will run out. I'd certainly in the history books, it'll be clear that this guy got screwed because the oil companies used their influence to cover up the shady things they were doing. But it is inspiring to see folks in the younger generations coming together and like pushing this work forward, and they have the most to lose. They have the most to lose in what's coming, and it's increasingly becoming more and more decision making. Like, people are saying, well, do I want to have kids? Do I want to bring them into a world that's hurting like this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
kids.
Scary.
Woo. Yeah, no, I mean, me personally, I'm like, yeah, that's a legit thing that I hear a lot of people saying. Yeah. Like, I don't want to bring kids into this world because what world are we going to give them?
Could be a scary future.
Yeah, so it's scary, but I think one of the it's really inspiring what folks are doing, the Fridays for the Future movement and the Sunrise movement, and Fridays for the Future, they're basically doing school strikes. I don't know if you've heard anything about that movement, but they're doing a strike every Friday where they're walking out of school and basically saying, the adults, get your stuff together and start addressing this properly. Like, we're kids and we're able to see that something's wrong. Yeah. So we'll see. But I think one thing that was really, really heartening, I mean, a lot of bad news in the climate report that came out today from the UN. But one of the best things I saw in there was that it's saying that there was this concern that we would hit a tipping point, right? And that the ice would start to melt, or the permafrost, or this, and then it would be just carbon everywhere, and there's nothing we do matters. And what they're seeing is that, like, that's not what's happening. That's not what's going to happen. So at this point, every ton of carbon that we can stop from being emitted into the atmosphere will lower the total amount of warming that happens in the future. And to me, that gives me a good amount of hope in that, like, the work we're doing today may not be enough to have the best case scenario, but it could also save lives 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line. Yeah,
it's going to have positive consequences on what's going to happen. It's not like because I think a lot of people have this weird mentality where it's like, oh, it's like a futility thing. It's like, well, I'll be dead by then. So, it's just like, really, dude?
That sucks for you guys.
Yeah. It's a weird mentality, man.
I agree.
But like what you're saying, I feel like people feel hopeless, or they feel like it's futile, but really taking action and getting involved in something like this, like you end up finding that meaning, and it's, so get involved. I guess everyone audience out there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's all sorts of small things that folks can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
From trying to not use so much plastic, bags, et cetera,
Protesting.
Protesting.
Tying their bodies to tractors.
And to trees, so they stop, trees. But I mean, I always like it's this stuff, climate activism. In some places here, it gets dangerous. You get arrested, get beat up and stuff. In Mexico and in India, like I just saw this video about how the sand from India is very precious and from building concrete, and so but people are like, you're destroying our environment, and they disappear people. In Mexico, they killed all these people in Michoacan, or at least a couple of activists. Because they wanted to protect the butterflies there, right? The monarchs, and so, a lot of these, in some places it's very dangerous to do climate activism.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely, and I think there's two pieces. I wanted to just back up a bit real quickly because you're talking about the individual shifts that folks can make, and the plastic and eating less meat and doing, and that's all really good and important, and people should do that if they're able to and it makes sense for them. But the most important thing is going to be systems change. We're in a bad system right now, and so you need to vote for, elect people who are going to do the right thing. People like Jesse Lopez here in Santa Ana, who's fighting for this stuff, who are going to do the right thing and fight for this better future that we know we can build and what is possible. And I think, at least to me, one of the things that needs to happen is countries like the United States, like China, other places that have used up massive amounts of carbon and the carbon budget, need to go forward and invest in other countries and help them, modernize and move forward, but in zero carbon energy pathways. And I think that's going to be a big fight, because there's people here who are saying, well, we shouldn't even change the stuff here. But now you want me to pay to go and help some other folks. Like we did it with the Marshall Plan, back at the last century. It's been done, and climate change is a global problem. It's not going to just affect certain nations. It's going to be everywhere. So I think hopefully that's the way the world moves, in a way that is addressing this as the problem as it is, which is the biggest issue that I think that humanity has ever faced.
Yeah. And I mean, it's economically, it's going to make more sense too as green energies become, easier and cheaper to develop. And also to realize that getting oil is going to get more and more expensive to the point that you're putting in more energy for the energy that you're getting out. It's and I think there's even been situations where boards of corporations have been infiltrated by folks that saying this is not economically in the right direction that we want to go into, to drill more. But I mean, a lot of folks say there's not a real good alternative. I think I watched the Michael Moore film, the last one that came out, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, because I'm like, oh man, we're screwed. I thought but he basically said, similar to I guess the affordable housing industrial complex, that the green energy has become a complex too, where folks are getting all this money to do this, but really we don't really have a viable alternative to fossil fuels.
It's so interesting because I remember when that came out, and I was so quite honestly disappointed in Michael, because I've seen a lot of it. I don't like all his films, but I've seen a lot of it. He's had some really powerful pieces, and Bowling for Columbine and other pieces that are just wow. And I remember, hearing about it, I was just he did not do his homework. He did not do his research, because there are issues with lithium mining and doing the battery technology and figuring out stuff. But battery recycling is getting much better. There's more and more ways to do these things more sustainably and in a better fashion. And if you rewatch the movie and look at the experts he was talking to and interviewing, there was no diversity. There was all a bunch of older white guys, the people he was talking to in the movie, and he wasn't actually talking to a broad base of the climate movement, because if he had, they would have been you're crazy. This is clearly the way. There are problems. No one's going to say there aren't problems in moving any one energy system to another, but it's not it's not it's like comparing an apple and orange. One is so clearly more toxic and harmful than the other, and you have to do it in a way that's sustainably and fight for these things. But to paint it as like, well, clean energy is just as bad as oil is like, you could see the oil executives and the big corporations being like, thank you, Michael Moore, for posting this thing. You saved us 5 years of time. And
damn,
it was frustrating.
I see. I will say that, when I hear Elon Musk say like, we'll coup you if we want to Bolivia to get our minerals, that makes me angry and sad, because,
they're saying
like everybody's like, oh, we're cool, Tesla, look at me, like it's the new Prius.
Well, that's like saying the silent part loud or whatever, because that's like what we do as a country with like South America in particular, and it's like, like you're supposed to not say that, and you're supposed to say we're gonna. That's a funny thing you were saying.
You're gonna bring democracy.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
You.
Like Nathan, you're saying we should actually invest in the countries that we've impacted with our reckless climate policy, right? So, but the funny thing is that we always say, oh, of course, we're always supporting South America. We're spreading democracy and making sure, your government, you're like a democratically elected government is not fair. That's a dictatorship. We're coming in here, we're going to help you out, and getting our corporations involved. So, but we always paint it as like we're doing them a favor and stuff. But whereas we actually do need to help them out, maybe let them run it, or, anyway, we need to figure a system out to do that in a fair way. It's a tricky situation.
Yeah, man, we could continue talking. There's so much we were just mentioning. It's like, man, how do you fix climate change? It's like it's gonna take more.
Last question: how do you fix it in 3 words?
Yeah,
okay.
Go.
All right.
Go.
Big question. I'll try. Okay. We're gonna solve it right here, right now. No, it's the biggest thing that you can do is figure out everyone's different. There's not one way to take this on. For some people, it's getting informed. For some people, it's going to a march. Other people, it's writing letters to the editor or writing, posts on their blog. It's listening to podcasts, educating yourself, educating your kids, voting, going out and volunteering or looking into the science of it. There's so many different ways that folks can do things and make a difference. And the point is, don't just stop at the individual things and recycling and doing stuff like, which is a whole other can of worms, but, and eating less meat and the plastics and all that stuff, but go out and get involved with a local politician who you support. Go out and support resolutions like the one we have in Santa Ana right now, which I think is actually a perfect time to plug what folks who are listening to this show can do to support the resolution in Santa Ana. Does that work for you, Jose?
Absolutely.
So if you go to, and I think we can put this in the link, but it's Stand.earth/Santa Ana. And if you go there, it'll take you to a form where it'll allow you to automatically submit a letter to all the members of the city council, the mayor, and their public comment line. And so basically it will get submitted into the public record that you support this resolution. And which is a big deal because the staff reports on that. When you do that, you'll also get an email that says, hey, this is when the meeting is and instructions on how to call in. So the two things to do are send a message, really easy, takes 30 seconds to a minute to get it done. It's pre-written, you can edit it if you'd like. And then on Tuesday, the 17th, a week from tomorrow, call in, make a quick 3-minute comment and say, hey, I support this resolution. We need it for the future of our city, for the future of this planet. It matters, and just keep doing the best we can.
Can you repeat that website again? If somebody can help put that in the comments of the Facebook show, that'd be great.
Stand.earth/Santa Ana. I'll put it in the chat here as well, and someone can copy and paste it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, again, do your part. Civic engagement is crucial in this moment. That's the only way that we're going to get things done. The corporations, powers that be, they're banking on us, just being our comfortable capitalist consumerist selves and not really standing up and lifting our voices. But in a moment when you perhaps folks feel like, what can I do? Like the odds are so stacked against us in the environment, but you can start locally, right? And build up from there. So this is going to be very important. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, Nathan, it's been a pleasure connecting with you and speaking to you and hearing from you and the good work that you're doing in this with this coalition, with this particular resolution here in Santana. But I'm sure there's all sorts of good work that you're connected to in all sorts of spaces. So because it takes a village again, and so you're just one person, but a very crucial person. And there's so many more out there that are also.
Yeah, but the harvest is plenty, but the laborers
are few. So yeah.
Glad to have you.
You're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, y'all. You have a really cool show. It's really, really nice to lift up these issues, and appreciate you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was Nathan Taft and Patricia joined us a little earlier. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Patricia and Nathan doing all sorts of good work here locally to fight for the resolution here. So I encourage everybody to definitely call. If you can't call, you can email before the meeting to let your voice be heard and let our council know that we stand behind these things to try to save ourselves from ourselves.
Yes.
Truly, protect our land, our air, and our health, because that's why do we want to save the planet? Because we're trying to save ourselves. The planet's gonna be fine. The planet's gonna shake us off like too many flies on its back. Like, get off me. Yeah, but if we're not going to be around very long if we continue to treat the planet as we have.
At this rate, yeah.
Yeah, man. How you doing, Dylan?
Oh, fantabulous.
Fantabulous.
Yeah, man. It is all connected. It is all weirdly interconnected. Woo!
It's all connected. Yeah.
But actually, I'm thinking about it more, like about the interconnected stuff. It's like, I think some people see this like, oh, we should protect the land and it's sacred and all this stuff. They just think it's some like, I mean, maybe it is religious or spiritual, that's fine, but just like a new age kind of positivity. But literally, like scientifically, if you believe in evolutionary biology, I mean, we arose as an interaction with our environment and other creatures in it. And it's like, how can we so drastically change our environment? And that's like, I mean, we're still like kind of monkey creatures at the end of the day. No matter how smart you or I think we are, we're animals and we have these needs. We have we are acclimated through millions of years of evolution to a certain environment, and it shaped us. And we, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like we shaped each other through millions of years, and then just in the last few hundred or thousand years, like human life totally changes, the population explodes, and then, hey, what could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, I just feel like it's very, just arrogant, human arrogance to say like, we don't cause this, like, oh, we just drastically changed how the planet operates. No consequences though, right?
Yeah, we could just dump all of our stuff into the ocean. It's a big like natural recycling plant.
It's huge, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna do something with it.
It goes away.
And it doesn't. And now you're seeing like the plastics that are in these massive islands in the ocean then become little pebbles and they sink to the ground, and then the animals eat them, and then we eat those animals,
and now we're filled with tiny beads of plastic.
Yeah, woo! I'm like, we're gonna become like hybrid humans pretty soon.
Gonna evolve.
Yeah, no, but you're right. It was a symbiotic relationship between nature and humans. We, and for a while it really worked to the humans' favor until we thought that we were better and greater and could manhandle, for lack of a better word, the environment, and we can't. These forces, whether it's fires, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's the rising sea levels or decreasing, sea levels and lakes and such, and the very real aspect of us running out of water. The shit's gonna hit the fan at some point, and I don't want to be around for that. But it's going to, and so at that moment, it's gonna really take some courageous individuals to rally back and perhaps survive. Like the drasticness of what we're doing right now, and I think that's a big part of it. It's like, did we evolve as a society to get to the level where we have enough comforts to blind us from all the problems of the world? Was that with evolution?
Was that the goal?
Was that the goal?
That's ascendance, apparently, according to Americans.
But no, I think not. I think it's evolution, survival of the fittest, survival of the wisest, survival of the kindest, most compassionate, that will be able to see us through these dark hours. So
yes.
So big love and big all the power to all those folks that are fighting in the front lines and literally putting their lives on the line for the planet Earth, from Gaia, Mama Pachamama. Yeah. So, because we only got one planet, so we better take care of it.
Yeah, there's no plan B. What is the joke? I don't know. Planet A, no plan B.
You don't have enough money to join,
You're not rich enough for that.
Yeah, the Bezos and all these guys to go up to space. Sorry.
That's what everyone's trying to do, though.
Yeah.
You get that rich to get out, That's like that's the more American mentality to handle the situation.
Well, we screwed this one up.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my paper though and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it cannot be human selfishness, man. It's literally killing us. Thank you everybody that watched, that tuned in for the first time, or again, thank you to our awesome guests. Apologies for the late start. We had some unforeseeable things that got in the way of us. Life happens, so that, and traffic and all these things. So, So thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, follow, share. For folks that didn't tune in today, they can watch it, tomorrow. You can also watch it on YouTube, listen to it on Spotify. Look for us. It's Happening. ITZ Happenin. Where we interview people on the front lines of the issues that matter to you here in Orange County, California, America, and the world.
Milky Way Galaxy.
So with that, I want to thank Edgar Silva for being an awesome audio video engineer. Iron Lion Media, Iron Lion Media Studio, where you see our beautiful faces whenever we feel like doing a show. We're gonna have an awesome guest next week, I believe.
They might be awesome.
They might be awesome,
or that we'll have a guest.
It'll be awesome that we'll have a show, and the guests.
The audience would be in awe.
Will be pretty awesome. Yeah, so hit up Iron Lion to record your podcast. Today.
Or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or whenever. Just send an email. Okay.
I think a shout out to my beautiful fiance feeling under the weather. So speedy recovery. Yeah.
Interim executive producer. Or wait, no, she's executive producer. Permanent, semi-permanent.
Yenny Diaz. And thank you everybody that watches us. Big shout out to Benjamin, Don Ben, and all the cool people.
And Jed.
Andres, I saw.
Yep.
And Jed.
And Claudia.
Margaret. Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So
everybody.
From Dylan Thompson and Jose Gloria, all of us here in It's Happening family, we are signing off.
It's happening!
vida para no ver lo que es verdad. Te han engañado, no es libertad, lo que tú vives es vulgar. Ser un esclavo sin descansar mientras que el burgués se aprovecha de tus labores. Hay que luchar para vencer este sistema capital.